What if the key to resolving conflicts isn't about winning the argument, but about mastering your own response? In a world where everyone is trying to prove they're right, we often forget that the true strength in conflict resolution comes from how we manage our emotions, control our reactions, and maintain our peace. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on inner calm and rational thinking, offers a way to handle even the most heated disputes without getting caught in the cycle of anger and retaliation. What if, instead of engaging in endless arguments, we could solve conflicts through wisdom, understanding, and emotional control? Let's explore why Stoic principles might just be the most effective and peaceful way to resolve any conflict. In Stoic philosophy, conflict is not something to avoid or fear, but a natural part of life that offers an opportunity to practice virtue. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, often wrote about how challenges, including conflict, should be viewed as moments of growth, not obstacles. According to Stoicism, the external world is beyond our control: people's actions, their words, and their behavior. What is within our control, however, is our reaction. When faced with conflict, the Stoic doesn't seek to control the situation externally, but to maintain control of their own response. This inner control is where true strength lies. When we argue with others, we often find ourselves reacting emotionally: anger, frustration, defensiveness, allowing the conflict to escalate. But Stoicism teaches that these emotional responses are not dictated by the external event, but are choices we make based on how we interpret the situation. If we can change our perspective and not take things personally, we can neutralize the conflict before it consumes us. For example, when someone criticizes us or challenges our beliefs, a natural reaction might be to defend ourselves aggressively or to retaliate. But the Stoic approach is to pause, breathe, and assess the situation rationally. What is truly at stake here? Is our peace of mind worth the potential conflict? By choosing not to react impulsively, we avoid making the situation worse. Instead, we maintain our composure, allowing the other person's words to pass without triggering a defensive or combative response. This is the essence of Stoic conflict resolution: not to fight against external circumstances, but to preserve internal peace despite them. By viewing conflict as an opportunity to practice these principles, we strengthen our ability to stay calm under pressure. The more we practice this response, the easier it becomes, and over time, we become better equipped to handle conflict with grace and wisdom. This is what makes Stoic principles so powerful. They don't just help us survive conflict, but help us use it as a tool for personal growth and self-mastery. Emotions play a pivotal role in conflict, often driving us to react impulsively, sometimes in ways that only escalate the situation. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot always control the emotions we feel, we do have the power to control how we respond to those emotions. Seneca famously wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." This highlights the Stoic view that our emotional reactions often arise not from the situation itself, but from how we perceive it. When faced with conflict, it's easy to be overwhelmed by anger, frustration, or defensiveness, all of which cloud our judgment and provoke rash responses. However, Stoics understand that emotions, particularly negative ones, can be managed if we learn to step back and observe them without being swept away by them. Seneca's approach to emotions in conflict involves recognizing them, understanding their source, and then making a conscious decision about how to act. Anger, for example, can often be triggered by feeling disrespected or wronged. But Stoics argue that we must ask ourselves, is this anger justified? Is it based on facts? Or is it merely a reaction to my interpretation of the situation? This kind of reflective questioning allows us to distance ourselves from the emotional storm and focus on rationality instead of reacting out of instinct. By taking a moment to pause, a Stoic can recognize that the emotional surge is temporary and does not need to control them. The key is not to deny emotions, but to not let them dominate our behavior. Instead of fighting against anger, Stoics practice emotional restraint by choosing not to act impulsively on it. This deliberate choice to remain calm doesn't mean suppressing anger or other feelings, but rather understanding their temporary nature and allowing them to pass without dictating our behavior. In contrast, when we allow emotions like anger or defensiveness to take over, we often end up saying things we regret or escalating the conflict unnecessarily. Stoicism teaches that the true strength in conflict lies in the ability to remain composed, to be mindful of our emotions, and to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. By practicing emotional control, we cultivate a deeper sense of inner peace and mental clarity, even in the most heated moments. This practice leads not just to better conflict resolution, but to a more resilient and balanced mindset overall. Rational thinking is at the core of Stoic conflict resolution. The Stoics believe that human beings possess the unique ability to reason, and this capacity for rational thought is what allows us to transcend our base emotions and reactions. When faced with conflict, it is easy to become caught up in the heat of the moment, allowing our emotions to dictate our response. However, Stoicism teaches us that this is precisely the time when reason must prevail. By stepping back and considering the situation rationally, we can create space between stimulus and response, giving ourselves the opportunity to choose the best course of action. Seneca often wrote about the importance of using reason to evaluate situations and guide our actions. He suggested that when we are faced with a difficult or provocative situation, we should take a moment to reflect on the facts rather than react impulsively to our emotions. For example, if someone insults us or challenges our beliefs, instead of immediately defending ourselves or retaliating, a Stoic would pause to consider why the insult affects us and whether it truly warrants a response. By questioning our emotional reactions and separating them from the situation itself, we can choose a more measured, reasoned response that is not driven by impulse. This approach to conflict is not about being passive or avoiding difficult conversations. It's about choosing to engage from a place of calm, clear thinking, rather than from a place of emotional turbulence. Rational thinking allows us to see the situation more objectively, to understand the motivations of the other party, and to respond in a way that aligns with our values. When we approach conflict with reason, we are better able to see the bigger picture and find solutions that are fair, constructive, and in line with our long-term goals, rather than reacting out of immediate frustration or anger. In modern times, where conflicts often arise from misunderstandings or rash judgments, the Stoic practice of rational thought is incredibly valuable. By slowing down, reflecting, and questioning our emotional responses, we can engage in conflicts with clarity and purpose. This doesn't mean avoiding conflict altogether, but rather approaching it in a way that preserves our mental peace and allows for more productive, less emotionally charged interactions. Through the practice of rational thought, we can navigate even the most challenging conflicts with strength and wisdom, ultimately leading to better outcomes for ourselves and those around us. A fundamental Stoic principle in conflict resolution is the focus on what is within our control. In any conflict, it's easy to get swept up in trying to control the behavior or reactions of others, especially when we feel misunderstood or wronged. However, Stoicism teaches that the only true control we have is over our own actions, thoughts, and responses. By shifting our focus to what we can control, we gain not only a clearer perspective, but also the power to manage our own emotional state and reactions in the midst of conflict. Seneca, in his writings, often emphasized the importance of recognizing the limits of our power. He encouraged us to ask ourselves, what is within my control in this situation, and what is not? In any conflict, the actions and opinions of others are beyond our control. We cannot dictate how someone else will behave, nor can we force them to see things from our point of view. However, we have full control over how we respond. This understanding shifts our mindset from one of frustration and helplessness to one of empowerment. Instead of reacting emotionally or defensively, the Stoic focuses on how to respond thoughtfully, with patience and clarity. The Stoic approach encourages us to recognize that while we may not be able to control how others act, we can control how we engage with them. For example, if someone accuses us of something unjustly, we cannot control their perception, but we can choose how we respond. We can choose to engage calmly, with reason, or we can choose to remain silent and allow their words to pass without stirring our emotions. By accepting that we cannot control others, we release ourselves from the stress of trying to change them and instead focus on maintaining our own integrity and composure. In practice, focusing on what we can control leads to less frustration, less conflict, and more peace of mind. When we stop trying to control everything outside of ourselves and instead direct our energy toward managing our own reactions, we approach conflicts with a sense of calm rather than anxiety or aggression. This is one of the most powerful aspects of Stoic conflict resolution: the ability to rise above external circumstances and maintain peace through the control of our own thoughts and actions. In Stoic philosophy, virtue is considered the highest good, and it is through the cultivation of virtue that we find true strength in conflict. Virtue encompasses qualities like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, traits that are essential for resolving conflicts in a way that aligns with our values. Instead of focusing on winning the argument or proving ourselves right, the Stoic mindset teaches us to act in accordance with these virtues, guiding us toward a solution that promotes peace and understanding rather than discord and resentment. Seneca frequently wrote about the importance of justice in handling conflicts. To the Stoics, justice is not about retribution, but about fairness and treating others with respect. When engaged in a conflict, a Stoic would ask themselves, what would justice require in this situation? Rather than resorting to anger or revenge, a Stoic seeks to understand the other person's perspective, to listen with empathy, and to respond with fairness. The goal is not to win the argument, but to find a resolution that respects both parties and aligns with the principles of justice. Courage is another key virtue in Stoic conflict resolution. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to face difficult situations with a calm mind and an unwavering commitment to doing what is right. In conflicts, we often fear confrontation or the potential for disagreement to escalate. Stoicism teaches that courage allows us to confront these fears head-on without being controlled by them. Whether it's speaking up in a difficult conversation or standing firm in our principles, courage enables us to navigate conflict with clarity and strength. Temperance, or self-restraint, is equally important in conflict resolution. In heated moments, it can be tempting to lash out, to engage in petty arguments, or to act impulsively. Temperance teaches us to exercise self-control and resist the urge to escalate the conflict further. By practicing temperance, we prevent ourselves from becoming overwhelmed by our emotions and instead respond with thoughtfulness and composure. Ultimately, Stoic virtue is about responding to conflict with wisdom, not emotion, with fairness, not selfishness, and with self-control, not impulsive reactions. By prioritizing virtue in conflict, we transform the way we approach disagreements, from a battle to be won into an opportunity for growth and reconciliation. When we act in accordance with virtue, we can navigate even the most challenging situations with dignity and grace, building stronger, more resilient relationships in the process. One of the most powerful tools in Stoic philosophy for resolving conflict is the practice of negative visualization. This might sound counterintuitive at first. Why would imagining worst-case scenarios help resolve conflicts? But negative visualization, a technique taught by the Stoics, involves intentionally considering the possibility of loss or hardship to reduce the impact of such events when they occur. By imagining what could go wrong, we prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for challenges, making it easier to face them with equanimity when they arise in real life. Seneca often emphasized that we suffer more from the anticipation of misfortune than from the misfortune itself. By practicing negative visualization, we can reduce the fear and anxiety associated with potential conflicts. When we mentally rehearse a difficult situation, such as a disagreement with a friend or a confrontation at work, we take away some of the power that fear holds over us. We recognize that we can survive difficult moments and that the pain we fear is often not as bad as we imagine. This understanding allows us to approach the conflict with greater calm, clarity, and emotional resilience. For example, if we fear that a confrontation might lead to the end of a relationship, practicing negative visualization allows us to reflect on the possibility of losing that relationship and to assess whether we would be able to move forward. It helps us understand that, while the situation may be painful, it is not the end of the world. We would still have our inner strength, our values, and the opportunity to rebuild. By accepting the worst-case scenario, we remove the emotional charge that fear gives us, and we can respond to the conflict in a more composed and rational manner. In a more practical sense, negative visualization also prepares us to deal with the inevitability of conflict in our daily lives. Instead of being surprised or thrown off balance when conflict arises, we are mentally ready to face it. This Stoic exercise teaches us to view adversity not as something to fear, but as an opportunity to practice virtue and resilience. It reduces the power that conflict has over us, allowing us to approach it not as a crisis, but as a natural part of life that we can navigate with strength and grace. Another valuable Stoic practice in resolving conflict is the power of silence. Seneca often wrote about the strength found in not reacting immediately, especially when provoked. In the heat of conflict, our natural instinct might be to speak up, defend ourselves, or retaliate. But the Stoic approach teaches that silence can be one of the most powerful tools in diffusing a situation. This isn't about avoiding the conflict or suppressing our feelings. Rather, it's about taking a step back to observe the situation without the impulse to respond right away. The power of silence comes from the space it creates between stimulus and response. When we choose not to immediately react, we allow ourselves time to think, reflect, and assess the situation with a clear mind. This pause is essential in preventing impulsive emotional reactions that might escalate the conflict. Seneca would advise that before speaking in moments of anger or frustration, we take a moment to breathe and consider whether our words will bring us closer to a resolution or simply fuel the fire of the conflict. In practical terms, silence allows us to maintain control over our emotional state. Instead of letting our anger, pride, or defensiveness dictate our response, we can choose to remain composed. This act of restraint prevents us from saying things that might be hurtful or that we may later regret. It's not about avoiding confrontation, but rather about confronting it with mindfulness and calmness. By choosing silence, we show that we are not controlled by the external circumstances or the provocation of others. Moreover, silence can often disarm the other person in a conflict. When we stop engaging in the usual verbal back and forth, it forces the other party to reconsider their position and perhaps reflect on their own behavior. In many cases, the absence of verbal escalation can bring the conflict to a natural resolution. Silence gives space for reason, for empathy, and for understanding to emerge, rather than allowing the situation to devolve into a battle of words. In today's world, where everything seems to demand an immediate response, whether through text, social media, or face-to-face interaction, the power of silence is more important than ever. By practicing silence in moments of conflict, we can respond more thoughtfully and maintain control over our emotions, leading to a more peaceful and productive resolution. It is a Stoic tool that not only helps us navigate conflicts, but also cultivates greater inner peace and wisdom. One of the core principles of Stoic conflict resolution is the practice of understanding the other person's perspective. It's easy to become entrenched in our own views during a conflict, focusing only on our own point of view and defending our position. But Stoicism teaches us that true strength comes not just from being right, but from understanding the other person's reasoning and acknowledging their perspective. By recognizing that the other person may have valid reasons for their actions or beliefs, we shift the focus from winning the argument to understanding and resolving the issue. Seneca often spoke of the importance of empathy in conflict. He believed that to be truly wise, one must be able to step outside of their own experience and see things from another person's point of view. This practice of empathy does not mean that we must agree with the other person, but it allows us to remain calm and rational in the face of disagreement. By understanding where they are coming from, we can respond with greater compassion and less defensiveness. This not only diffuses the tension, but opens the door to a more constructive conversation. In practice, when we encounter a conflict, a Stoic would pause and ask themselves, what might the other person be feeling or thinking? This simple shift in mindset allows us to approach the conflict with a spirit of curiosity rather than a desire to be right. We can ask questions to gain clarity on their position, listen attentively, and seek common ground. This approach shifts the conversation from a confrontation to a collaboration, where both parties feel heard and understood. By practicing empathy in conflict, we also practice humility. It reminds us that our perspective is not the only valid one, and that everyone's experiences shape how they see the world. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps us navigate the conflict more skillfully, with a focus on resolution rather than retaliation. Empathy also encourages forgiveness, as we recognize that others are often struggling with their own challenges, just as we are. In today's polarized world, where it's easy to become entrenched in our beliefs and dismiss others, the Stoic practice of understanding different perspectives is more important than ever. It allows us to engage in conflicts not as battles, but as opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. By seeking to understand others first, we create space for true resolution, where both parties can move forward with greater wisdom and mutual respect. Seneca's teachings offer profound insights into the role of forgiveness in conflict resolution. Forgiveness, according to Stoicism, is not about excusing bad behavior or condoning wrongdoing, but about freeing ourselves from the emotional burden that comes with holding on to resentment or anger. When we refuse to forgive, we carry the weight of those negative emotions, which not only cloud our judgment, but also hinder our ability to move forward. Seneca believed that forgiveness was a powerful tool for maintaining inner peace and emotional clarity, especially in the face of conflict. Rather than holding grudges or seeking revenge, Seneca advised letting go of the desire to retaliate. He often argued that holding on to resentment only harms ourselves, not the person who wronged us. By clinging to anger, we allow the other person's actions to continue to control our emotions and thoughts long after the event has passed. This creates an ongoing cycle of suffering that prevents us from finding peace. Seneca taught that by choosing forgiveness, we break that cycle and regain control over our own emotional state. Forgiveness also reflects a deep understanding of Stoic principles, particularly the idea that we cannot control others, only our own actions and responses. When someone wrongs us, we cannot control their behavior, but we can choose how to respond. The Stoic approach is to let go of the desire for retribution and instead focus on our own virtuous response. This might mean confronting the person with respect and fairness, expressing our feelings without anger, or simply choosing to release the emotional charge and move forward. In many cases, forgiveness can lead to reconciliation. But even when reconciliation is not possible, forgiveness allows us to preserve our own peace of mind. It liberates us from the power that the conflict holds over us and allows us to reclaim our emotional freedom. By practicing forgiveness, we embody the Stoic virtues of justice, temperance, and wisdom, demonstrating strength not through vengeance, but through the calm and rational release of negative emotions. In today's world, where grudges and anger are often seen as justified responses to conflict, the Stoic practice of forgiveness offers a radical and transformative approach. It's not about denying the pain or injustice of the situation, but about choosing to rise above it, free from the corrosive effects of anger. By embracing forgiveness, we unlock the true strength of the Stoic philosophy, the ability to remain calm, centered, and at peace, regardless of the conflicts we face. The limitations of arguments are a crucial consideration when it comes to conflict resolution. Arguments often become battles of ego, where both parties are so focused on proving their point that they lose sight of the true objective, resolving the conflict and finding common ground. Seneca, along with other Stoic philosophers, understood that arguments frequently escalate conflicts rather than resolve them. When we engage in an argument, we tend to become attached to our position, often out of pride or a desire to be right, and this can cloud our ability to listen and engage meaningfully with the other person. Seneca believed that the key to resolving conflicts wasn't about defending one's position at all costs, but rather about engaging in a conversation that fosters understanding. Arguments often lead to a winner and a loser, but in the Stoic approach, there is no need for either. The goal should be to reach a resolution that respects the dignity and perspectives of both parties. When we get caught up in the need to win, we lose sight of the bigger picture. Our emotions take control, and instead of seeking a peaceful resolution, we focus on defeating the other person. This only serves to intensify the conflict, leaving both parties feeling frustrated, misunderstood, and disconnected. Seneca's advice was to avoid engaging in arguments where the outcome would merely be a clash of egos. Instead, he suggested focusing on dialogue that promotes mutual understanding and finding common ground. He emphasized that we must ask ourselves whether the conflict is truly worth fighting over, or whether it can be resolved through patience, empathy, and rational discussion. Often, the most powerful way to resolve a conflict is by stepping away from the argument altogether, allowing emotions to settle, and approaching the situation with a calm and open mind. In today's world, where social media and political debates often encourage arguments rather than solutions, the Stoic lesson on the limitations of arguments is especially relevant. We can become so focused on defending our views that we forget the true goal: understanding and resolution. By practicing Stoic principles, we learn that it is not our role to win every conflict, but to approach it with wisdom, fairness, and an openness to learning from the other person. When we step away from arguments and focus on understanding, we are more likely to find peaceful and meaningful resolutions. The benefits of Stoic principles in modern conflict resolution are vast and profound. In today's world, where conflicts arise regularly, whether in personal relationships, at work, or even in society, Stoicism offers timeless wisdom for handling disagreements with grace and strength. The principles that Seneca and other Stoics taught were not just relevant in their time, but are incredibly applicable in the fast-paced, often emotionally charged environment we live in today. One of the main benefits of Stoicism in modern conflict is the emphasis on emotional control. In our world, people are frequently quick to anger, defensive, or reactive in the face of challenges. Whether it's a heated argument, a misunderstanding, or a workplace dispute, emotions can often cloud our judgment, making the conflict harder to resolve. Stoicism teaches us to recognize our emotions but not be controlled by them. By focusing on rationality and calmness, we prevent ourselves from being swept up in the emotional storm, allowing us to approach the situation with clarity and a level head. Another significant benefit of Stoicism is its focus on perspective. In a time when divisions between people seem to grow ever wider, whether due to differing political opinions, cultural differences, or social issues, Stoicism encourages us to understand the perspectives of others, even when we disagree. The Stoic approach to conflict is rooted in empathy and understanding, helping us engage in conversations that prioritize connection over confrontation. By practicing empathy, we recognize that the other person's feelings and views are shaped by their own experiences and struggles, just as ours are shaped by ours. This understanding fosters a more respectful dialogue, making it easier to reach a resolution that respects both parties. The Stoic practice of focusing on what we can control is particularly valuable in modern conflicts, where we are often overwhelmed by external pressures, from workplace stress to societal expectations. In conflicts, it's easy to become consumed by the desire to change others or control the outcome. However, Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control the actions or opinions of others, only our own responses. This shift in mindset takes the pressure off of needing to control every aspect of the situation, freeing us to respond in a way that aligns with our values and principles rather than reacting out of frustration or pride. Finally, the Stoic emphasis on resilience is invaluable in a world that often feels unpredictable and turbulent. Conflicts, both large and small, are a natural part of life, and Stoicism teaches us to face them with courage and grace. By embracing conflict as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to our well-being, we build emotional resilience that allows us to handle challenges with strength. This resilience isn't about avoiding conflict, but about embracing it with the confidence that we have the inner strength to handle whatever comes our way. By applying Stoic principles to conflict resolution, we can navigate today's challenges with greater wisdom, patience, and composure. The Stoic mindset helps us stay focused on what truly matters, not winning the argument, but fostering mutual respect, understanding, and peace. In doing so, we not only resolve conflicts more effectively, but also cultivate a deeper sense of inner strength and emotional balance in our everyday lives. Key Stoic practices for conflict resolution provide us with tangible methods to manage and resolve conflicts in a way that reflects both wisdom and emotional maturity. These practices are simple but profound, encouraging us to approach difficult situations not with an emotional reaction, but with thoughtful reflection and restraint. One of the most important practices is daily reflection. Seneca recommended taking time each day to reflect on our actions and our emotional responses to the events of the day. By examining our reactions to conflict, we gain insight into our own triggers and the areas where we can improve. This process helps us recognize patterns in our behavior and identify moments when we might have acted impulsively or allowed our emotions to get the better of us. Through reflection, we can learn from each experience and gradually become more measured and composed in future conflicts. Another crucial Stoic practice is the art of negative visualization. This technique involves imagining the worst-case scenario in a conflict before it happens. While this may seem like a pessimistic approach, the purpose is to prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally for adversity. By considering what might go wrong, we reduce the impact of fear and anxiety when things don't go as expected. Negative visualization allows us to build resilience by reminding ourselves that no matter the outcome, we have the strength to endure and remain calm. This practice helps us face conflict with a mindset that is grounded in acceptance and preparedness rather than fear or panic. The Stoic focus on controlling what we can and letting go of what we cannot control is another key practice for resolving conflicts. In any disagreement, we often want to change the other person's mind or behavior. Stoicism teaches us that our efforts are better spent focusing on how we respond, rather than trying to control or manipulate the actions of others. By shifting our attention to our own thoughts, actions, and emotional responses, we regain control over the situation. This mindset allows us to approach conflicts with clarity, knowing that while we cannot always change others, we can always choose how we act. The practice of empathy is also essential in Stoic conflict resolution. Stoicism teaches us to view the other person's perspective, especially in moments of conflict. Instead of assuming we are right and the other person is wrong, we are encouraged to ask questions, listen carefully, and seek to understand the motivations and feelings of others. This practice doesn't mean that we must agree with the other person's position, but it fosters a dialogue based on respect and understanding rather than judgment or defensiveness. Empathy opens the door for genuine communication, allowing both parties to feel heard and valued. Lastly, the Stoic ideal of virtue provides a framework for resolving conflicts in a way that aligns with our highest principles. Stoics believe that true strength comes from acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. When faced with a conflict, we can ask ourselves, how can I act with justice and fairness? How can I practice self-restraint and avoid reacting in anger? What is the wisest course of action in this situation? By holding ourselves to these virtues, we can navigate conflicts with integrity and honor, ensuring that our actions reflect the highest version of ourselves, even in difficult circumstances. These Stoic practices offer practical, actionable tools for resolving conflicts in a way that fosters peace, understanding, and personal growth. By incorporating these practices into our daily lives, we cultivate mental strength and emotional resilience, equipping ourselves to handle conflict with grace, wisdom, and inner calm. Stoicism doesn't promise that we'll avoid all conflict, but it provides us with the tools to face it with clarity, purpose, and a commitment to living virtuously. Applying Stoic principles in conflict resolution isn't just about handling a single situation well. It's about cultivating an enduring mindset that transforms how we approach all areas of life. The beauty of Stoicism lies in its consistency and practicality. By incorporating these teachings into our daily lives, we create a foundation for lasting inner peace and emotional strength. As we practice Stoic techniques, we shift from being reactive, driven by the ebb and flow of emotions, to being proactive, guided by reason and virtue. One of the most important aspects of this transformation is the realization that conflict, when approached with Stoic principles, becomes an opportunity for growth. Each conflict we encounter is a chance to exercise the virtues of patience, humility, and understanding. Through daily practice, we begin to see conflicts not as threats, but as opportunities to demonstrate our ability to live by our values. As we confront challenges with emotional control and rational thinking, we strengthen our resolve and deepen our understanding of ourselves and others. This shift in mindset doesn't happen overnight. It requires consistent effort and self-reflection, but the rewards are worth it. With practice, we learn to navigate disagreements with a calm and measured approach, reducing the emotional toll conflicts take on us. Our relationships become more respectful and meaningful, and we become more resilient in the face of life's challenges. Instead of letting conflict consume us, we use it as a tool to sharpen our character and refine our approach to life. In today's world, where disputes seem to arise constantly, the ability to respond with clarity and composure is more valuable than ever. Whether we're dealing with a disagreement at work, a personal conflict, or even a broader societal issue, Stoicism offers a way to engage in conflict that preserves our peace of mind and fosters constructive dialogue. The Stoic approach helps us see beyond the immediate discomfort of conflict and focus on the long-term benefits of acting with wisdom and virtue. By making Stoic principles a part of our daily practice, we not only resolve conflicts more effectively, but also cultivate a more fulfilling, peaceful life. Each conflict becomes a stepping stone towards becoming a wiser, stronger, and more virtuous individual. In the end, Stoicism teaches us that true strength doesn't come from winning arguments, but from mastering ourselves in the face of adversity. If you want to transform the way you handle conflict, start by applying one Stoic principle today. Whether it's practicing empathy, taking a moment of silence before reacting, or focusing on what you can control, these small shifts can lead to more peaceful and productive outcomes. If you're ready to dive deeper into Stoic wisdom and its practical applications, be sure to subscribe for more insights on how to live with strength and serenity in all areas of life.